Hello friends, my name is Charles Ajayi Kiran, and today I want to discuss a most important subject, and that is the subject of failure. Most people consider failure to be an extremely evil thing to happen to them or to have visited them. Let me make this prediction, however. If you are going to spend time in this planet called Earth, I can guarantee you without question that you are going to fail. The question, however, is, are you failing forward? Are you failing towards the direction that you want to travel in? Are you failing towards the direction of your dreams? That is the question. Because I'll define failure today as I go through this very, very short presentation. This presentation is meant to be pure inspiration for you. Because I am somebody qualified to discuss this very, very emotive subject or topic of failure. I have experienced failure so many times in my life. I have failed in business at least 12 times. Okay? So I understand the subject of failure probably more than most. I will be proving to you today from the annals of history some of the world's most successful failures and how these individuals have been able to transform the world as we know it. Let me say this real quick. The famous words, failure is not an option, was made very, very famous by Jerry Bostick, a NASA flight controller, when they were trying to bring the damaged Apollo 13 spacecraft back to Earth. Since those famous words were spoken, you have heard it everywhere you go. I have heard it so many times. Failure is not an option. However, if you are trying to navigate a damaged spaceship down to Earth, I'm sure you and I can probably understand why failure clearly cannot be an option in such circumstances. But in most circumstances of life, success, business development, building your enterprise, building your dreams, trying to make it with your exams, succeed in your academic pursuits, and places, we can begin to understand why sometimes failure clearly can become an option. You see, life will never reveal, neither will it release its true treasures to you and I until we understand and have learned from failure. Nobody learns from success. Have you thought about that before? Most successes are gleaned from terrible failures. So if you are thinking failure is a bad thing, I think we need to change that paradigm and look at failure in its correct perspective. Because failure is a key prerequisite for any success you are going to enjoy or any success that you are going to have in life. So what I'd like to do at this point is spend a little bit of time sharing with you some of the world's most famous failures. And then you and I can judge whether failure is truly a terrible thing or an incredible thing. Now, let me begin. Thomas Edison, everybody who has read any personal development books or any leadership books or any entrepreneurial type books will have come across that very, very famous name. Thomas Edison was the man who failed over 10,000 times trying to achieve or create a commercially viable electric light bulb. And we have used his stories so many times. Another very famous failure is Colonel Helen Saunders. The chap who at the age of 65 with his $105 Social Security check began to pitch his chicken recipe to whoever will listen to him. And today we have the pleasure of enjoying finger-licking chicken from the Kentucky Fried Chicken franchise or franchises around the world. Because that was a man who failed over 1,000 times, but refused to give up until he succeeded. But let's look at some other very great failures. And then you can begin to tell me if you'd like to essentially be aligned with these wonderful failures or with some other people who consider themselves successes but have never failed in life before. Arianna Huffington, you may have heard of the Huffington Post, okay? Now, she is an author and co-founder of the Huffington Post. World famous, all right? But here's what I want to tell you. Did you know that her second book that she wrote was rejected by 36 publishers? Yes, you read that correctly. 36 publishers before any of her books were accepted. What about multi-billionaire Jeff Bezos? Amazon is an institution. It's an industry in itself. All right, I'm sure you may have heard of Amazon. I have no idea where you are watching this recording, maybe in some ranch somewhere or in some farmland somewhere in Africa or in South America. I have no idea where you are, in Brazil somewhere or in Europe, but you may have heard that name, Amazon. Jeff Bezos founded Amazon, but here's what's interesting about Jeff Bezos before it became a household name. He had several failed ideas. One of the most notable online auction sites, which evolved into something called Z Shops. This brand failed terribly. Still, Jeff Bezos would repurpose the idea into what would eventually become the Amazon marketplace. They learned from their failure. They continued towards their predetermined direction of travel. And eventually, they birthed what most of us in the world are enjoying today. What about billionaire Larry Ellison? By the way, Jeff Bezos is worth many billions, okay? Billionaire Larry Ellison, founder of the mighty Oracle. He had his shares of ups and downs as well. When he dropped out of college and worked as a programmer for 8 years, he co-founded a company with his former boss. But Oracle struggled for years before making it big. Ellison even had to mortgage his house to obtain a line of credit to keep the business afloat during extremely turbulent times. You may have heard of the designer Vera Wang, all right? Her business, her fashion design empire is worth $1 billion today. However, she wasn't always known for her high-end wedding gowns. In fact, Wang was once a figure skater, and she failed to make the US Olympic team, figure skating team. She then moved on to work for Vogue, but was turned down for the editor-in-chief position before leaving Vogue to become a designer. You probably have heard of Vera Wang. What about billionaire Sir James Dyson, who essentially came out of nowhere and is dominating right now? The vacuum cleaners and even the electric fan. You need to see Dyson's creation. Amazing. Aesthetically beautiful designs. James Dyson, one of Britain's richest men. He's in the top 15 richest men now in Britain. What, over £4.5 billion, right? About $7 billion worth right now. His name is associated with vacuum cleaners. But in fact, it took Sir James Dyson 15 years and all of his savings to develop a bagless prototype that worked, that eventually worked. He developed 5,126 prototypes before he cracked it, before he made it. Billionaire Sir Richard Branson, probably one of the most famous billionaires in the entire world. He founded Virgin Atlantic in 1984, flying with only one jumbo jet. During the UK government certification flight, birds flew into an uninsured engine, resulting in an explosion. Branson had to pull out cash from his overseas financial subsidiaries and reconstructed the company. After a court battle with British Airways and rising fuel prices, plus the terrible economic recessions in the early 90s, I remember that as well, because that's when I was made bankrupt during the early 90s as well. I remember that period, terrible period in the UK economic scene. Branson had to sell his music empire to Thorn EMI in 1992. It has been a very, very rough path for him, but today he is world famous and one of the 20 richest men in Britain and one of the richest men in the world. Veteran actor, iconic actor Sidney Poitier, most of us